lost in the noise generated in the last 2 weeks by the roar of the president's F1 scandal and the deafening silence on presidential achievements in the first 100 days of the second Marcos administration, was some news about the political opposition, in particular, the Liberal Party, which has reorganized itself and elected a new leadership. What do these changes mean for the party, for the opposition, for the democratic project? We have many questions, starting with, where are the women? Good evening. I'm John Nery, and you are in the public square. On September 30, the Liberal Party elected former Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan as its new chair and 9-term Congressman Edcel Lagman as its new president. The promotion of Congressman Lagman to the party's chief executive position in particular is note and newsworthy. Here we have a political, legal, and parliamentary heavyweight who has been in the party for a decade, assuming a critical role at the young age of 80. How does he plan to revitalize the party? How does he plan to defend democracy? Liberal Party President Edcel Lagman joins us tonight. Good evening, Kong Edcel. Thank you for joining us in the public square.
Good evening, John, for placing me in the public square.
Maybe I can start by asking you, you've been in the party since, I think, 2012. What were the circumstances behind your election? How did that happen?
Well, the party needed to elect a new set of officers. And I see in the presidency of the Liberal Party a crucial challenge to elevate the party to political and electoral relevance. So I accepted the challenge. With respect to political relevance, I think we will have to sustain and enhance the acknowledged, enviable legacies of the party, like democratic liberalism, good governance and accountability, campaign against despotism and tyranny, fight for the promotion and fulfillment of human rights and political empowerment. With respect to electoral relevance, the party has to rise from the electoral defeats in 2019 and 2022 by preparing for the midterm election in 2025, now more than ever.
Well, that's very interesting, Kong Edcel. One striking thing about the 2022 elections is that there has been no massive migration of political animals from one party to the president, the new president's ruling party. Unlike before, there was a stampede to the Liberals in 2010, and then a stampede to PDP Laban in 2016. There is, as far as I can tell, no such stampede happening today. Is that good news or fertile ground for LP that is not happening?
Well, are you talking, John, about post-election happenings?
Yes.
After the presidential election?
Yes, turncoatism, joining the new president's party. There's not much of that going on now.
There is no much announcements or proclamations of changes in affiliation, but we see that there is a swelling of the majority coalition supportive of the new president. This is typical of what has been happening in the past, when because of lack of political maturity in our parties, there is an exodus from all political fronts to join the new aggregation allied to the president, not because of principles, but most probably because of expected political patronage.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the phenomenon is still there. No, the swelling of the majority coalition. I think what's striking, at least for me, is that the people, newly elected congressmen, governors, and mayors, no longer see the need to change parties. Whereas before, in other words, the deterioration of our party system has reached an extent where they can remain in their own parties and yet join the ruling coalition.
Uh, because of the umbrella, one does not have to disaffiliate from his party. All he has to do is
Mhm.
join the party's merger with the majority coalition, and that would spell the difference. And that has been happening. It will continue to happen.
Kong Edcel, what is the Liberal Party's posture vis-a-vis the majority coalition? Is it constructive criticism? Is it critical collaboration, to borrow the phrase from Cardinal Sin? Or is it something else?
Well, it's a principled criticism. It's
Mhm.
a principled uh, opposition when there is a need to collaborate because the policies are consistent with the people's interests, particularly marginalized and the disadvantaged. We are
Mhm.
not going to uh, detach ourselves from
Mhm.
having a collaboration. However, if we feel that the political initiatives of the majority coalition is detrimental to the people's interest or in derogation of the Constitution, then we will be forced to be critical and tell the people what is happening. And there is this importuning of the majority coalition, which the people must know.
Can we talk of specifics, Kong Edsa? Like, what are some grounds that you can find common, that you can work on together? What are some common grounds for working together?
Most probably, one essential ground would be the promotion of uh, human rights, because we are seeing an administration coming from a past which has derogated human rights, and there must be uh, a very serious step for the new administration to have to, to have remedial measures towards this oppression as well as derogation of basic human rights. And we feel that the appropriation, for example, for the department for the Commission on Human Rights is has been depleted, and also there is a zero appropriation for the construction of the uh, National Museum to honor the sufferings as well as the heroism of the victims of martial law during the time of the president's late father. These are grounds where we can have a common cause to really intensify our campaign for the promotion and fulfillment of human rights, particularly so when after a long delay in the appointment of a chairman of the Commission on Human Rights, we find someone who has no record at all, no advocacy at all on human rights. And we feel very strongly that that is not consistent with the president's initial pronouncement that uh, he will abide by the Constitution, giving human rights a primary mandate for the government to subscribe and to install.
Well, Edsel, I can understand. No, for instance, the appointment of the new CHR chair is an issue that you will take a stand in. You personally, as a human rights lawyer, but also the Liberal Party. But how can that principled opposition be a common ground for working? I mean, I'm trying to understand here what would be your appeal to the majority coalition. to change their, for instance, to what is this? Not confirm the new CHR chair. How would you go about it?
Well, we have started the campaign telling the public that the one appointed has no record whatsoever on human rights advocacy. And feel that kindred groups will have to collaborate with us on this particular score. And also, we have a campaign for more funds to be allocated to the Commission on Human Rights. Its budget has been depleted. It's lower than what was appropriated in the current year. So those are grounds where we could have a kindred spirit join us. But there are other grounds. For example, there could be a nascent uh, revival of an authoritarian or a despotic rule. For example, we have started the present administration has started with the resolution of the Commission on Filipino language, wherein 5 books were banned
Mhm.
from libraries and schools. Books which are authored by principally acclaimed literary
Mhm.
authors. Although this was withdrawn, the withdrawal does not
Right.
diminish the fact that there was an attempt to silence freedom of expression and academic freedom. And also, we have the latest uh, victim of, uh, of a journalist being killed for his advocacy. And we feel very strongly that that should not be condoned, and the government should be strong in its statements against any such renewal of a brutal killing of a journalist. Then also we have what happened in the uh, supposed partnership between ABS-CBN and Channel 5,
Mhm.
which was targeted by some members of the administration, and subsequently the two leading broadcast institutions
Mhm.
have relented and have scrapped what could have been a very proper merger, so that the public would have a better competition, and better competition would give us better production.
Kong Edcel, thank you for bringing up the issue of the killing of Ka Percy Lapid. It's the second under the second Marcos administration. It's really very concerning. This is a man with a lot of followers, and this happened to him. And I think that we will depend on personalities like you to continue denouncing this assassination. And I think that members of the majority coalition have also said things, expressing shock about what happened, expressing their disgust over the assassination. So I can imagine that you can work with the majority coalition on maybe formal resolutions condemning the assassination, and then calling for a thorough investigation. So I can see that as common ground. But the issue of the zero budget for the museum for human rights victims, if I'm not mistaken, that was part of that was the result of a bill that you were a principal author of. Is
I
it?
was the I was the principal author of the law,
That's
which
right.
this is our law,
That's right.
which mandated the compensation and recognition to human rights victims during martial law, and at the same time construct the museum for
That's
the
right.
victims of martial law.
My
That is
question,
mandated by law. It is mandated by law, John, and it should be given the appropriate allocation in the 2023 national budget.
but do you think, my question, Kong Edsel, is do you think you can generate a majority in both houses of Congress uh, to raise the budget for the museum for the first year from zero to something substantial?
Well, if we are not successful in the House of Representatives, I think we may be successful in the bicameral conference committee with the senators supporting this position. Nothing is yet forfeited because we still have the bicameral conference committee. And in the bicameral conference committee, a number of progressive allocations are done.
That's right, and I'm reminded of your reputation as someone who really knows how the parliamentary, the legislative process works, and it might redound to the benefit of the Liberal Party. I cannot help but note that even during uh, hostile presidencies, you were able to pass certain laws or advance certain bills. I'm hoping that we'll have a similar or a greater success rate for laws like this. But I'm a little worried, Kong Edsel. The first Marcos presidency wasn't kind to you and your family. I mean, human rights victims, and so on. And yet you're a little more optimistic about reaching some sort of uh, modus vivendi under the second Marcos administration. Do you really think there is room for maneuver in the human rights space under this President Marcos?
If we do not, if we are not optimistic of a room for reconciliation, then we will be facing a blank wall. Yes, John, my family was a victim of the martial law regime. My younger brother, a human rights lawyer
Mhm.
and labor lawyer, disappeared on December 11, 1977, never to reappear again. He could have been uh, about 87 years old by today.
Mhm.
Uh, his only fault was he led his unions to defy the martial law ban on labor strikes.
Mhm.
And he continued to advocate the rights of the working man, even under the oppression of the uh, martial law regime. But it's not only my brother. Several other uh, courageous individuals who fought martial law suffered the same fate.
Mhm.
And I think we could not have national unity being called for by the new administration if the present president cannot admit the brutalities and oppression committed by his late father and to really make amends and vow that these atrocities will never happen again. If he fails to do that, he will continue to be known as the son of the dictator Marcos.
You know, this reminds me the concept of second innocence. No? Some philosophers argue that there's such a thing as second innocence. So, I, what you're saying
Yeah.
really strikes me as the idealism of the survivor. Um, let's hope something real comes out of that, Kong Edsel. Kong
Uh,
Edsel,
we, we can always hope, but if that does not happen, it will not be a second innocence. it will be a second guilt. It's a second culpability.
Kong Edcel, how about the idea of electoral relevance, which you raised earlier? Um, has the Liberal Party and maybe its progressive allies, with which it is aligned at this moment in time, have you reached electoral rock bottom in 2022? Are you on your way up? How would you read the political situation?
Not really rock bottom, because the elections in 2022 were both local and national.
Mhm.
Although with respect to the national, we did not win a single seat for senator, and our candidate for president lost. In the local elections, we have a number of incumbents belonging to the Liberal Party. So it's not yet rock bottom. So
But
there is a good prospect of strengthening the party. We will have to uh, campaign for more membership based on voluntarism across the grassroots and the youth leaders in the barangay, in the school and university campuses, as well as in the national scene. And also, we will have to uh, accept alliances or forge alliances with kindred spirits in the political spectrum. That those are the things we are going to do to strengthen the party towards having a fighting chance in the midterm elections of 2025.
in fact, your constant political ally, Senator Risa Ontiveros, did win re-election in 2022, the only one from the opposition. What does her campaign for Akbayan, and of course as part of Leni Robredo's slate, tell you about how to win a Senate seat in 2025?
One, we have to start early. It is never too early to start.
Mhm.
Number two, we will have to strengthen our grassroots anchorage. That is very important. Then also, we will have to have young blood
Mhm.
infused into the party, because the youth would be a very potent partner in an electoral campaign. And also, we will have to ally with kindred spirits, with parties and politicians with the same ideals and project and prospective uh, tendencies, which would ally themselves with the ideals of the party. I think we should be all doing this, and we should start now, and we are starting now.
If I may ask the question I asked at the very start of the show, the new set of leaders, very formidable names, right? Chairman Kiko, President Edcel, but you also have Teddy Bakilat, you have Erin Tanyada, Jason Gutierrez. Uh, um, my question is, where are the women leaders of the Liberal Party?
Well, they are with us, and they are very supportive of our party. As a matter of fact, there were so many women members coming from the ranks of the party who were present during the NECO meeting, which elected the new set of officers. In the case of former Vice President Leni Robredo, she delivered a message, a unifying message to the party, although she has no actual position in the party at the moment. She continues to be supportive of the party.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is the role now for for former Vice President Leni Robredo? Is she formally out of the party? Is she just a member? Is she part of an advisory council? What is
She,
her role?
is- she will be a prime advisor of the political party. She is still with the party. She belongs to the party, and remains steadfast to be with the party.
What about Senator Laila de Lima, Kong Edcel? Do you see her playing a role as a leading officer of the Liberal Party? I mean, she's carried your flag in the austere confines of Camp Crame.
Whether in the whether in captivity or in the vastness of freedom, uh, Laila de Lima will always be a potent and competent partner and supporter of the party. She is still with the party, and we are rallying behind her. And I think she has suffered so much, John, in the past 5 years.
Mhm.
Her freedom now will be a small consolation compared to her sufferings. And I would stress that jail to jail transfer or rigodon will not give true justice to her. What is important is she must be liberated from a 5-year odious and solitary confinement for fabricated charges, one of which had already been dismissed, which was acquitted, and in the two other cases, major witnesses had withdrawn. The evidence of guilt against her is really weak, and she's entitled to at least to be freed on bail, if not a complete acquittal of the remaining cases against her.
Sir, Attorney Laila is no longer Senator of the Republic. Would electing her into a high position in the Liberal Party, for instance, as another executive vice president, would that help in her legal cases? Uh, what do you
Well,
think?
to our mind, with or without her being elected to a position in the Liberal Party, her cases would depend on the weakness of the prosecution against her. And no amount of justification from the administration would level the prosecution evidence against Senator De Lima. I call her senator
Mhm.
because she was senator, and she was deprived of her incumbency because of her incarceration. She deserves to be elected again as senator.
Thank you. Kong Edsel, do you agree with former Vice President Leni Robredo's assessment of the electoral situation in 2022 when she says that the main problem is disinformation?
Basically, that is correct. 6 years of disinformation against Leni Robredo cannot be offset by a 6-month campaign. That was the main reason for her being marginalized. And I think very strongly that disinformation is continuing, not anymore against Leni Robredo, but against uh, the those who are critical or opposed to the present administration. Uh, uh, there must be an end to this. I am filing a bill, John,
Mhm.
in the House on media literacy,
Mhm.
which means to say that people, more particularly students, should be given that critical thinking to discern which is false and which is accurate in media presentation. Sweden leaked the uh, leak the uh, incidents of misinformation and untruths in Sweden because they instituted media literacy in their schools, and this has been very successful.
if I'm not mistaken, we actually teach media and information literacy, or MIL, right now in our senior high schools. I think grade 10 or 11. So, if disinformation is still a problem despite having that in the official curriculum, it might be worth studying first exactly what happens or what does not happen in these MIL classes.
That's a good input, John, and we are going to see to it that we validate what's happening in these senior high school courses. Whether, in fact, there is a thorough uh, education and uh, what is encouraged is media literacy.
Kung Edsel, aside from disinformation, what else explains, in your view, the victory of President Bongbong Marcos?
Well, the political powerhouses were all with the president, with the then uh, candidate for president, Bongbong Marcos. I think we cannot deny that.
Mm-hmm.
And that carried a lot of force because in this country where people still lacks uh, education on the choice of candidates, there is the tendency that the electorate would follow the command of their political leaders. And that happened. The command votes plus the disinformation spelled the difference and resulted to the failure of the candidacy of our president as well as our senatorial candidates.
Is this coalition of political dynasties backing up Marcos and Sara Duterte? Uh, is this also a source of vulnerability for the administration? Right now, it's just a little over 100 days, and there is so much talk about factions in the administration. Do you trace these rumors back to this, as you said, political powerhouses, maybe already fighting over turf?
In this country, a day after the elections, uh, partisans are preparing for the next election. That is why we should expect a disenchantment between the two uh, major dynasties
Mhm.
once we approach the 2028 presidential elections.
Not earlier, not for 2025.
2025 would be what you could call uh, a pilot election for
Yeah.
the for 2028. It will
Mhm.
start in 2025. I think we will be seeing that more visibly as time unfolds.
But the factionalism doesn't apply just to the administration coalition. What is your reading of the factions or the different forces in the political opposition?
Well, I think the main objective for the political opposition or the alliance of political parties is to have a common slate in 2025
Mhm.
so that all forces would go in support of the common slate. You know, a slate of 6, 8, or 12
Mhm.
should be formed, and this should be supported by the alliances in the opposition so that our efforts will not be dispersed and our trajectory is clear.
So you're saying the focus should be on the Senate elections in 2025. That will
That is
test the power of the political opposition. whether they can win 2028. That's what you're saying, sir.
That is what I'm saying. And from those who could be winners in 2025 senatorial election, most probably we could have a presidential candidate in 2029.
Let me veer up a little from the current trend of our discussion. I was struck in an interview I conducted about 2 weeks ago with an eminent scholar, Patricio Abinales, the University of Hawaii. He said that um, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is actually a social liberal. He might be open to not just, for instance, pushing civil union, but actual same-sex marriage and so on. Sir, you've pushed for some socially liberal policies, no? In Congress. Do you, first of all, do you agree with this assessment that Bongo Marcos is a social liberal? And second, do you see this as a possible common ground for working with the administration?
Well, in a very limited extent or aspect, that can be true. For example, in my advocacy for the enactment of an absolute divorce law in the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that the president during his campaign was in favor of the measure under
Mm-hmm.
certain conditions. That is a good starting point for a common advocacy. And I think that it is high time, more than ever, that we should have this divorce decree, this divorce law, because it is not for everybody. It is for those who would need it. As far as the overwhelming majority of Filipino couples are concerned, they don't need an absolute divorce because they are having happy and vibrant relationships. But with respect to those who are the victims of an abusive and dysfunctional marriage, particularly the wives, then there is a need for absolute divorce. And no less than the Catholic Church has its own version of divorce, which is known as the dissolution of marriage based on psychological incapacity. So, in other words, the church cannot be more popist than the Pope. And eh, the the all of the Catholic countries in the world, except the Philippines, have their own version of the absolute divorce, embodying severity or liberality.
I've been looking for possible or potential common ground for the political opposition to work with the administration. So some socially liberal policies might be part of it. Perhaps some redefinition of human rights issues might be part of it. I would like to ask you, Kong Edsel, no? We were talking about Kaporsi Lapid. And it seems like the president has is serious about the investigation. From what we can see so far, investigation into the killing of the influential radio broadcaster Percy Lapid. But also, we see that when in yesterday's hostage taking, rather Monday's hostage taking incident, where Senator Laila de Lima was the hostage, uh, President Marcos immediately called her through the cell phone of the DILG secretary to commiserate with her, to ask her if she wanted to transfer to another jail, and so on. Is this just a cynical distancing of himself from controversies, or is this? Are we seeing the actual character of the president on display here?
Well, first of all, these actuations are expected of the president. And I hope that they were made in serious candor. And there is no reason to suspect that they were not. But in the case of the late Percy Lapid, certainly there should be a vigorous investigation on the culprits and their liability. But what is important now is to prevent the recurrence of such brutal assassination of those who are exponent of free expression and critical dissent. Now, with respect to the transfer of Senator De Lima to a new detention facility, it could be a knee-jerk reaction. But as I've said, jail to transfer or recordon of detention places will not give justice, Senator De Lima. What would give her justice now is to free her either by acquittal or by giving her the right to bail.
Kung Edcel, we're running long. If I could just ask one last question. What is the future of the Liberal Party under your leadership? Does it have a future?
Well, definitely. One which has an illustrious past deserves an illustrious presence and an illustrious future. We have a future, and we are going to have that, John, and we will exert all efforts that the legacy of the party and the works of their principal leaders, past and present, will not go to naught. We are going to prevail, and we are going to be relevant once again.
Thank you. You know, I'm reminded of what the new president said. One of the reasons why he chose the old Congress building as the venue for his oath taking, he said, was that he has very fond memories of visiting his father there when that used to be the Senate. But if you look at the timeline, that was when Ferdinand Marcos Sr. was actually a member of the Liberal Party. When he was that age, and I thought that's just one of the many ironies of our history. On that note, Kong Edcel, thank you very much for sharing your time, your plans, and your views.
Thank you, Nery, for this opportunity. Just another footnote. President Ramon Magsaysay came from the Liberal Party, and he was a popular president and an effective president. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, he moved to the Nacionalistas because of the Quirino factor. Really, you can trace many of the illustrious figures in our history to the two parties that were trading places, the Nacionalistas and Liberals. Maybe I can just end with one more question occasioned by this exchange, Kong Edcel. What are the chances of change in the Constitution, of Chacha, where, you know, perhaps we might be brought back to a two-party system?
Well, in the first place, we had, John, we never had a two-party system. All we had was 1.5, because there was actually no variance in ideology, more on personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, if there should be any constitutional change, it should be conducted now, not towards the end of the tenure of the president, because it will always be suspect. And I think that we should be able to outline very clearly what are the amendments sought to be proposed. And I think the amendments should not be made by a constituent assembly, but it should be made by a constitutional convention.
Kong Edcel, wait, hold on. Is this the Liberal Party position now on charter change, that you are in fact open to it? Or is this your personal view? And
it is my personal view.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not discussed this among the leaders and followers of the party. This is my personal view, John.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Again, thank you very much, Congressman Edcel Lagman. Thank you for joining us here in the public square.
Thank you again, Jan.
That's it for us tonight. The next step for engaged citizens is always to take a more active part in rebuilding our democracy. See you in the public square. This is John Nery. Thank you and good night.